we've got access now to some wonderful smoke detectors that actually work for people who have hearing loss. And so they vibrate under the pillow and flash a strobe light, which will help alert you if you're slumber when there's a smoke detected. So some of this technology is available on subsidies that if someone in your family needs that, we'd love you to have access to that technology so that they can get the earliest possible warning.
You're listening to Outreach right here on Westsider Radio with Brian Peel, coming to you live from Kindred Studios, right here in the heart of Yarraville with myself, Brian Peel. And also my behind-the-scenes special guest. You can't see him, but he is here. Marcus Cook, our great, including marketing manager. Well done, Marcus. Thanks to Gratitude Home Care and iHelp Disability Services. Care when you need it. Support you can count on. We are coming to you live on westsiderradio.com.au and the westsider.com.au, so you can stream us 24/7 any time of the day. But don't forget to head over to Mixcloud and you can grab Outreach on demand and you can download our shows from Mixcloud. Don't forget, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and on YouTube. We are all over the social media channels and Mixcloud. And if you are in the industry of aged care, disability in particular, or any of the like, and you find a connection to aged care or disability, or you'd like to be a guest on this show, you can reach out to myself and Marcus. It is brian@gihc.com.au and marcus@ihds.com.au. Time for our next guest, a very special guest, live in studio with me. Hal is from Able Living Group, and they are a manufacturer and supplier of mobility aids and healthcare equipment. Welcome to the studio, Hal. Thank you for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
How are you going?
Very good. Very good. Thank you.
And is this your first podcast radio interview?
It's my first recorded interview in a really proper setup.
Okay.
I've had a lot of YouTube ones with the phones, but nothing like this.
So you're not really a radio virgin yet.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Welcome to the studio. Thanks for coming in. Thanks for your time. We want to have a chat because mobility aids and healthcare equipment play a major role in aged care and disability in particular. Mm-hmm. Give us a little bit of a background about Able Living Group and just the concept behind your organisation.
Okay, so Able Living has been around for more than 40 years. It's kind of seen as the whole ups and downs of the Australian landscape of the healthcare. Many reforms it's been through. I actually taken over the business about 2 years ago through complete chance by meeting the ex-owners. The old owners, they were very smart business people, very traditional owners, and they were just looking to retire. But they cared so much for their current staff and their clients that they just refused to kind of let the business go or wind it down. There was a lot of large corporates trying to buy them, but they didn't want to lose their identity and mix it into a big corporation because they've seen like what that does to a business. So yeah, we met, and then our first meeting, I just looked at it from a completely outsider point of view. I said, I asked a lot of questions. Why, right? Why does the trials have to be done in the store? Why this, why that? And then we just really clicked. After that, we just discussed and bought the business and took it over.
What a great thing though, because there are clients who've probably utilised Able Living over a number of times or over the years for their equipment, for all their needs. And to just disappear would probably be a little bit distressing for them if they couldn't pick up the equipment they needed, right?
Absolutely. And this industry is not a want industry, it's a need industry. So, and it's location based. So if you live not that close to an actual store, it makes it very hard to try and get access to it, right? So that's why if you look on the Google Maps, there's a very good spread of mobility aid stores across Australia just to keep every area so evenly serviced.
So yours in particular, Able Living, in terms of location, which area are you based in and what areas do you service?
We are based in Carnegie, Mont Albert and Heidelberg West. But because we have a new concept with the mobile showrooms, we can cover most of the greater Melbourne, which helps us extend our reach to people in need.
Now, you did mention off air, and I want you to let our listeners know, because this is such an amazing concept. Obviously, people might find it difficult coming to one of your showrooms or to your locations to look at the equipment. You actually take the equipment to them.
Yep.
Tell us about that idea.
So how this started is I've always been infatuated with people that, for example, they just outfit a bus with different things and take it around and just plop down the bus and just sell things, right?
Those mobile discos running
mobile
off an old metro bus.
Yeah. And it kind of started with the ice cream trucks, right?
Yeah.
That infatuation.
Yeah.
I used to always wait for it. I'm like, how can you bring ice cream to me? Right? That doesn't make sense to me, right? I was like, that's amazing. Even though ice cream tastes a lot worse, that concept, I wanted to do it. So when I always been infatuated with that. And after we took on the business, I went on with my staff to do a lot of trials, right? So how it used to work is we put everything in a van, right? Two people go to the client's house, we disassemble it in the van, take it inside the client's home, right? They try it. If it's not good, we take it out and then bring another piece in, assemble it, because it's mostly recliners and beds, right? And you just spend 2-3 hours there. A lot of the elderly clients have a bit more narrow homes because they're a bit older, right? And then the OT sitting there twiddling their thumbs, the client sitting there waiting. We have 2 staff doing this, right? And it just seems so wrong to me, right? So what we've went back and brainstormed is that, hey, what if we get a really large one? In this case, we decided to buy a lot of ex-ambulance vans, long wheelbase, fitted with a disability lift that can lift the client into the space, fit out with carpets, and put beds, recliners, and it's like them they can just step outside their home. It's like them entering their own kind of living room space, right?
That's incredible. So the showroom comes to them.
Comes to them. They don't have to wait for it to be set up. It's much more efficient. Everything can be done within 20 minutes, right? Instead of 2-3 hours. The client's not paying for the OT's time sitting there. And OT has a lot of things to do as well.
Which is costly as well.
Yeah, which is very, very costly, right? So the whole experience has been streamlined. We only have to send one person in right now because instead of 2, because OH issues, you can't have people lifting very heavy objects. And it just solved a lot of problems in this industry.
That's incredible. So the fitting and trial process, how would you say from start to end, like what's the standard process for someone if I called and said, hey, Hal, can you come over and bring me, a couple of different recliner chairs? How does that work?
So how it works is normally people get fitted or trialed by a specialist on their side, either OT or physio, right? People that don't, so if they want to get government funding, they have to go through that process, right? They have to have a report, an assessment done, right? Alternatively, we have our trial specialists, which are very knowledgeable in the product. We get some of your details, your rough heights, your preferences, and we make a few suggestions, right? So based off just very simple information, right? We can make a few suggestions already and narrow down your search, because in the industry, there's a lot of products. So we don't want to overflood you with different choices. So what we do is we kind of narrow it down to 2 or 3 and then bring you in and try the 2 and 3.
So in terms of what families should look for when choosing equipment, what should they look for when they're choosing equipment? Because as you said, there's so many options around. What's the key?
Look, to me, I think for equipment, the most important thing in this industry is just functionality, right? I think there's a lot of different equipments with different quirks. The 2 most important things, functionality and fitting size, right? Because everyone has really, really different bodies. My arms could be longer than yours, right? My legs could be slightly shorter, or I could be a bit more wider. The reason why there's so many different products in the industry is because everyone's different, right? Because to fit that, you need to find the right fit for their body size first, right? And their comfort levels. And secondly, is the functionality. Someone might need, for example, we deal with a lot of dementia clients, right? So for our beds, we came up with a remote specifically for dementia clients because there's not many buttons. They don't get confused as easily, right? So we customized a remote just for those type of clients. So it's all about customizability and tailoring to individual clients in this industry.
Goodness me, how quick has technology changed over the years as well?
Absolutely.
Quite a bit over time. I mean, we've seen wheelchairs and walkers around for a long time, but technology has changed. What's one piece of equipment that you think has been a real game changer?
One piece of equipment is actually something that we're developing. I think it will change the game quite a lot.
Okay.
So this inspiration, look, because my background's not completely from the industry, I think it's my advantage as well, because I ask a lot of whys where other people are taking it. So this is the norm. I'm like, why can't this happen? So I go to a lot of expos, and a lot of these expos, what they do is they have a section for healthcare, which is very small in terms of grand scheme. Maybe it takes up 2% of the overall floor space, right? And then when you have time, you start browsing the other spaces, right? So what happened is I've visited our space. Okay, that's great. Small innovations here and there. Now I went next door and there was a company making air cells that they put in office chairs. So what these air cells do in the chairs is it uses AI and sensors to adapt to the contour of your back completely, right? So as you sit down, if you lean forward, you'll inflate, deflate, and just keep changing it to match the contour of your back, give you support, constant support, right? And over time, they developed things like they made it able to be able to kind of give you a massage. So it's a body stretch massage using airbags, right, air cells. And then also what it was able to do is kind of shift the client around once in a while, right? So I said, this in our industry will be perfect because it solves a lot of issues. Firstly, OTs care a lot about the contact with the back, right? So if the client's sitting down, if there's parts that's more supported than others, not uneven support, it causes pressure sores, right? So I said, isn't that the perfect solution for us? And then secondly is a lot of people want massages, right? But massages from a clinical point of view is not necessarily good because it puts pressure on certain spots on the body, right? So what that does also, because it's airbag and it's just body stretching, it's not non-intrusive massaging, right? And that solves that problem. And thirdly is you want clients to be shifted around once in a while. Even if they're watching TV, they fall asleep, right? Potentially it causes pressure sore build up as well because there's certain spots that are constantly in touch with the body. And we can program this to shift the client around every 2 hours automatically to prevent that.
That's incredible.
So that solves all the issue.
It does.
Yeah.
And highlighted massage, but yeah, the way that some of these pieces of equipment are built and designed just really do stand the test of time. But they would have some sort of a lifespan on them, right? Wouldn't they, Hal? Like roughly, what is the lifespan on some of these assistive devices?
Look, to be honest, we give a minimum 3-year warranty to our products, sometimes 5 to 10, depending on the product. So the realistic lifespan, I think it's 3 to 5 years. After that, most people just upgrade. It gets worn, but it'll still work, but realistically 3 to 5 years.
What would probably one of your most purchased items you think? Is it recliners? I hear different things out in the community. People tend to there's a lot of people with walker devices. Some of them love their new mattresses and electric beds that they get. But what's one of the main things that seems to be flying off the shelves?
By volume, it's definitely walkers. Everyone needs a walker, right? There's no excuses for them. They like to go up to shop, whatever. Walkers, and then the people, I find a lot of our customers are quite trendy these days now, right? So compared to before, so walker is.
Do they come in different colors?
Yes, so it's more of a need and want item now.
Yeah.
Some of the other products are actually a need item, right? But walkers is need and want, so they come and they maybe buy another color. Right, a new model comes out that's a bit lighter, and they don't really need it, but they want it, right? So they'll apply for it.
I love that.
Yeah.
So in terms of assessment, so you work alongside OTs, physios, and the like, just to make sure there is the right fit. But how do you guys assess for the right mobility aid?
Look, when we assess the right mobility aid, we actually combine our knowledge with the OT's knowledge, right? So what OT is looking for is very, very technical point of view. For example, can their legs just reach the ground when they're sitting on a recliner, right? When they are sitting down with a handrest, is their hand well rested on there? Is there pressure? They look for pressure points, right? And then what our job is based on those assessments, make either adjustments to the current equipment or recommend equipment that can fit those criteria. So OTs come from a very technical point of view. We come from a very product knowledge point of view to choose the right product or customize the right product to that, to tell the OT, yes, we can do that. No, we can't do that. We have to try a different product.
Now, the equipment, mobility aids, the AT, that market it's a very special, unique niche of industry, part of the NDIS and aged care sectors. What is the state? Well, an update on the state of the current home care market and any potential future changes?
Look, to be honest, I think in terms of the overall state of the Australia healthcare industry, I think it's very unique in a way where Australia is the only country that I know, I'm not sure about America, but that can be 100% funded by the government. For example, New Zealand has zero funding. It's all self-independent. Like you have to pay for it if you want it, right? China, I believe, has up to 50% funding. So there's 50% co-contribution. I know Vietnam has no funding, right? So because of the state of Australia, where most of the money comes from government, it reacts very differently to supply and demand, right? People are less price sensitive. That's for one, right? And secondly is, I think it's a bit more dormant. When that happens, the market is a bit more dormant to changes, right? So people are a bit more laid back in this industry. And if you look overseas at the different technology that's in use, right? It's a lot more advanced than Australia, in my opinion.
So if people listening today sitting on a home care package or some NDIS funding, probably more so on the home care package space, and if they've received some funding from My Aged Care for assistive technology products, what's your advice to them if they don't know where to start?
My advice is the best advice I can give in this industry is if you find a good case manager for yourself, right, that can give you the right advice on maximizing that will change your whole life, right? Because it's a very deep industry with many know-hows in different areas. You need the right advice and guide. We generally don't give clients this because it's overstepping our boundaries, right? But they need to find the right home care provider that can give them the right advice. A lot of people choose to be self-managed, which is fine as well, and they can get the right advice, but the right case manager changes everything. And
that's really important because we've had a number of clients come through for package management, be self-managed or provider managed, and they're still waiting for funding to be approved via My Aged Care. But the funding's approved for their assistive technology, but it's tricky because we can't engage until the funding is available for the provider. So they're sitting on that funding, waiting to be approved for their package, so then we can help package manage their package so they can go out and get the equipment. It's sort of done in a bit of a reversed order, but it's great what My Aged Care are doing in terms of the amounts of funding they're getting for low, medium and high. So anywhere between 500 right up to 15,000.
15,000, correct.
Which is great for people, isn't it?
Yeah.
So Able Living has been around how many years?
More than 40 years, actually.
That's incredible, isn't it?
Very long. I stood the test of time.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. It's been through probably three owners.
That's great. Yeah. Do you do much market research? Like, because you did mention some of the other markets, but obviously the Australian market is a key market to be in for equipment. And there are lots of providers around who are working in that space under equipment and assistive technology.
Yeah.
How do you keep ahead of the game?
Look, one thing I do is obviously I travel a lot to different expos all over the world. The main ones are happening in China, actually. So I go and kind of understand what's happening in the technology space. The second thing is we always kind of look at what the competitors are doing, anything they're doing. But in general, I try to use inspiration taken from overseas into this because Australia is a market. It's quite interesting because a lot of people use Australia as a test market, a lot of companies, because Australia is not big enough for them to be the main market, but also it's quite reactive to different things, right? So, for us, it's about always kind of testing the market, bits and pieces, with feeding it with different new things, just to how they react and just taking small risks until one sticks, right? And then once one kind of strategy sticks, then we expand upon it.
Because technology will take over at some stage.
Yeah.
What do you think the future trends will be for mobility equipment?
I think, look, the trend in Australia will definitely be a more automated way for service to happen, more remote diagnostic as well, right? A lot of people that cannot, more efficient ways to prescribe clients, right?
Now, collaboration is a really important one because providers would like to work with equipment people and equipment people need to work alongside providers to get that holistic approach. How does collaboration between providers, clinicians, suppliers lead to, better client outcomes?
I think overall, you all have to be empathetic towards the client, right? Both of us is working for the client, essentially, right? So it's all based on empathy and understanding that, hey, this industry is a bit different. It's not like you're going to buy a gaming computer, right? because that's a one item. If someone comes and buy a bed, most cases they need it to sustain their daily living, right? To live a normal life. So because of that, the empathetic part really comes into play, where me and you need to work together. And if any issues arise, you need to solve it as soon as possible. But one bad thing I find in this industry is the after sales service is starting to slip away a bit in this whole industry, where after I sold it, it's like, okay, see you later. We us as a whole need to catch up on that part, right? Our responsibility does not end when the product leaves our store. That's the most important thing that the partnership, both sides need to realize.
Yeah, that is an important part. We do hear that, after the fact, they've had the equipment for a few weeks and it's like, I'm not quite sure if this is the right thing, or maybe it's a simple adjustment that needs to be made.
Simple adjustment. Sometimes it's simple teaching. You got to just teach them how to use it to its best, like to maximize its potential.
So there's some people out there today, Hal, that are thinking, okay, I think I'm ready to explore a bit more about what's available to me. In terms of Able Living, you've got your website here, which is able-living.com for more information. But what's the referral process like? So if someone wants to make a time to either you go to them or they can come to you, or if they want some more information, how can they do that?
So they can either call our general hotline.
I've got the number here. Yep. 1300-225-354.
Yep. Or they can email us at either info@able-living.com or sales to arrange a trial. sales@able-living.com. Either way, we have about 10 very attentive customer service staff, and we try to be potentially the fastest in the industry in responding to these inquiries.
And you will take one of those ex-ambulance vehicles.
Yep. So if they need in-home trial,
that's amazing.
By all means, let us know. We'll take it to you. We might do some remote assessment first. So one of our trial specialists might ask you a few questions about your state, what you're needing it for, whether you're working with a home care provider or you're independent by yourself, right? And then we'll take the right equipment to you.
That's been Hal from Able Living, our very special guest on Outreach today. So if you want to make contact or explore your options for mobility aids or equipment, check them out. It is able-living.com. The phone number 1300-225-354 for more information. Hal, thank you so much for coming in today.
Right.
It's been great.
Appreciate your time.
You've been listening to Outreach here from Kindred Studios in Yarraville on Westsider Radio with myself, Brian Peel. Thanks so much for having a listen. Don't forget to check us out online, social media. We're all over it. Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok and YouTube. And you can stream us online, westsiderradio.com.au, and check out the westsider.com.au. We are also on demand via Mixcloud. Don't forget, if you are in the industry, you'd love to come on the show, we'd love to have a chat. Reach out to me on social media, or also Brian at gihc.com.au or Marcus at ihds.com.au. We'll catch up with you on our next episode soon. Thanks so much for having a listen. This has been Westsider Radio, and you've been listening to Outreach. You're listening to Outreach here on Westsider Radio with Brian Peel. Thanks for your company. Wherever you are listening to us, we are coming to you from Westside Radio Studios here at Kindred in Yarraville. And my offsider, Marcus Cook, who is also working tirelessly in the background. I'll give you a wave for YouTube because you might be watching this online. He is our marketing manager, and it is thanks to Gratitude Home Care and iHelp Disability Services. Care when you need it, support you can count on. And we are streaming via the website. It is westsiderradio.com.au and also the westsider.com.au. Check out what's going on over there. You can also subscribe to our podcast. Head over to Mixcloud and see what is going on with all of our previous episodes. And we're all across social media, Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, and you guys tuning in over there on YouTube as well. So don't forget to say g'day. If you want to send us an email, you can. If you want to be a guest on this show, you can. It is brian at gihc.com.au or marcus at ihds.com.au. Time for our next special guest. Now, we've got an incredible guest in studio with me today. Tim is from the Country Fire Authority, who has the role of a community educator. Well, I will get Tim to elaborate a little bit further on that. I think he's probably wearing more hats, but I'll introduce you to Tim. Tim, welcome to Outreach.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be here with you and Marcus at Westsider today.
Thank you for coming in. This is, we have met probably last year, it might have been at one of the events, and we were thinking that it might be a good opportunity to get you into the studio and have a little bit of a chat about the work you do at the CFA, but also as a community educator. You've been in that space since you were, 17 years old?
Yeah, don't remind me of my age, mate. It's been a long time wearing this uniform, and it's part of who I am now because it's what I've always known, but the CFA is in my blood.
I love that because a lot of the work that goes on there is in a voluntary capacity
Yes.
from members of our community. So people who may not know or have not sort of been across the Country Fire Authority, can you tell us what the CFA does and how it supports community safety?
Absolutely. The CFA has a long treasured history in Victoria, being the primary agency to fight fires in rural areas. So obviously with urban spread, that's changed some of the landscape. So we work alongside our colleagues at Fire Rescue Victoria. We work very cohesively, but out in the rural areas, country Victoria, if you like, we're responsible for all the fire response. Also, we do other emergency management as well as motor vehicle accidents. So we're formed by people who volunteer for their local community. Fire stations are dotted throughout the landscape, and some of them are tin sheds with a couple of small fire trucks in them, and some are more professional fire stations. They all operate in a professional way, but it's effectively a beautiful volunteer cohort that comes together to protect people they've never met, to look after their community. So it's wonderful to be part of it, and I've been very happy to have that as a thread in my life.
I want to go back to a little bit back into your backstory in terms of working in a space as a firefighter. Just take us back to what your time was like volunteering for CFA in the capacity of a firefighter for your area.
So I started off in Dandenong as a volunteer firefighter, and then became a road accident rescuer, which was pretty confronting, really. No one ever wants to see another person having the worst day of their life, be it a house fire, their business is on fire, there's a local bushfire, or they've been in a car accident. It's very empowering to be able to be there to help that person in their time of need, but it's also very confronting. So it's stressful, but the camaraderie helps us get through that. We see a lot of trauma, sadly, but the bunch of people that come together to do that work are very, very good at looking after each other. So it's been very formative for me when I was a young man, joining it just before 18, and then getting a lot of skills and qualifications that enabled me to be competent when needed. So it's been really powerful in helping me become who I am today, and it's gone through journeys. You know, I'm no longer an active firefighter because I actually, in the last couple of years, acquired a disability, which doesn't mean I'm very, probably safe for myself to be out there doing that work. But I've got another role now, which I wouldn't have seen coming, but I actually really enjoy it now. So.
Because you have, as you said, you volunteered in that space and you did do the firefighting and going out to motor vehicle crashes for a number of years. I'm sure you've seen quite a bit in that time, be it, trauma incidents and also the stage of bushfires, which have obviously escalated quite somewhat over the years because of, a range of issues. What are some of the things that resonate with you now, or things that you think back on that time that is a takeaway that you've brought forward to your work that you're doing today to educate our community?
Yeah, it's definitely been an evolution. I think before I'd been out to a major campaign bushfire, I was naive to how intense and destructive they can be. I certainly have a very healthy respect for them now. And given last week we had, a whole lot of campaign fires burning out of control, and we worked very hard as multiple organisations, it's not lost on me the ferocity of those and the impact on families who've lost their houses, or worse, their stock, a family member. And the devastation of bushfires is it's incredibly sad to reflect on. The wildlife that perish, it's part of our landscape in Australia, that fire is part of regeneration, but the destruction is harrowing to see. But communities are resilient and they bounce back and they come together and they look after each other. So, in terms of being a true blue Australian experience, I think fire and emergencies galvanise people together, and I've seen that time and time again. So we are a resilient nation, and country people especially so. I think they are very good at rising above and coming together to work through the hardest of times. To be part of extinguishing a fire is just one small part of that. People obviously worry about, what will happen afterwards or if it'll happen again. And the nature of our environment is it will. We're probably the worst country in the world for conditions for fire based on our landscape and vegetation. But we've learnt to get better at fighting fires, but also preventing them and getting people to safety in advance of when a fire comes. So we've seen a much higher rate of people evacuating early, which translates to a lot less fatalities and trauma. So that's wonderful to see that evolution. Obviously, these things are still happening, so there's still some work to be done, but we know that Victorians are getting better at keeping themselves as safe as possible when we get those summer conditions.
Because we have seen a lot of that around us on the news of late, the bushfires taking control out in those country parts of Victoria, and some of the pockets sort of just out of the metro fringe as well. You mentioned on the camaraderie and the community behind rallying your neighbours, and it is just part of what we are as Australian people. What's one of the most standout things from you think, that you've seen from community members rallying behind? Look, I've seen things like they then put on concerts and fundraisers to help get communities back on their feet again, housing people, clothing people, feeding people. What's some of the good things that can come out of these tragedies?
An example from last week was a family that lives up in a town called Yark. Had horses, and they were able to float their horses out in advance of the fire front down to Melbourne, and people they'd never met opened up their paddocks for somewhere safe for their horses to go to a haven. I mean, what a wonderful thing to give people. And then people rallying around to generate money for food and hay for those animals, and just that level of helping someone you've never met to come to your house. And people have opened their doors for families, which is just... isn't that wonderful that, the community is so willing to help people who are in distress?
I want to ask about the people who are most at risk to these fires. Fires can start and just become out of control at any point in time. But when it comes to home fires particularly, who are the most people at risk, and why are older Australians and people with disability more vulnerable to that?
Yeah, you're right, Brian. There are certainly, we know statistically that, people at higher risk consist of those two cohorts, i.e., or perhaps people might be aged and frail and also have a disability, but one or the other combined form a statistic cohort that is much higher represented in fire tragedy than we would like it to be. So, to give you that in an anecdote, I would say that 20% of Australian population live with some type of disability, but we see a much higher rate of people getting injured or worse in house fires. Now, there's lots of reasons that precipitate that, but primarily people do very badly in a house fire if they can't escape the fire. So if they don't know what's happening, so they haven't detected it, if they haven't had the chance to prepare their property properly to prevent fires, and if they have trouble escaping the fire. So, for example, if it's someone that needs assistive technology to get in and out of bed, a hoist perchance, well, that creates another delay. And in a house fire, smoke, often not fire, is what leads to people passing away. We know that when you're asleep, your sense of smell is deactivated. So people without working smoke detectors won't be aware of a fire. So if you've got somebody who's hard of hearing, well, guess what? If they take out their hearing aids at night, they're not going to hear the smoke detector. And then by the time the smoke has filled the room, their chance to escape safely before it's too late might have passed. So we know that if we work to try and help people be as proactive in preventing, detecting and escaping a house fire, we know their outcomes are going to be much better. And it'll be a sad story to tell that they've had a fire at their house, but at least they're around to tell the story, which is what we want.
Yes. There's a couple of parts to this. One being what to you seems to be the most common cause of house fires that you're seeing, in Victoria right now, and the plan to leave when you need to go, or plan to have that plan in place should the episode come up that you need to
thank you.
escape.
We know that house fires often start in the kitchen. And there's a lot of reasons for that, but kitchens seem to be statistically the source of a lot of fires. Now, I'm a terrible cook. I burn a lot of things in the kitchen.
Oh, you're not alone, Tim. Don't worry about that.
So my wife has jokingly said that I use the smoke detector as an oven timer.
Because
when that's going off,
Tim.
I've burnt whatever I was trying to cook.
Yeah.
But that aside, we know that, a classic is people leaving the roll of paper towel up on their cooking surface and it's too close to the hob or the gas burner. We know that people using candles or incense near curtains, for example, could blow onto the ignition surface. There are other fires that start through electrical faults, but they're actually reasonably rare. I mean, we don't want to see people overloading a power board with double adapters so that it's creating a sense of electrical risk. But for the most part, we know that most house fires can be avoided. The way the houses are built these days, they've got inbuilt smoke detectors. As long as they're working, they're not much good to you if the battery's gone dead or they've gone out of date. We know that a smoke detector now, you can buy ones that have 10-year batteries. So the old adage of, change your clocks around daylight savings and change your battery is not really as relevant anymore. We'd rather people go out and buy a new smoke detector and have one in the kitchen, one inside every bedroom, and maybe one in the laundry and the living area. And the new ones that come out are really reasonably inexpensive, but they connect to each other. So if you're in your bedroom at night and something happens in the kitchen, it'll activate all of them so you get as much notice as possible. In terms of bushfire, well, obviously prevention is its own challenge, but in your own living area, there's lots of things you can do to prepare your house so that if a bushfire was coming towards you, your house would have the best chance of survival. And that's about cleaning gutters. There's a whole lot of resources we have on our website about things you can do if you live on a rural fringe that you can do to make your house, I guess, the best candidate for surviving an encroaching fire. So, what we really want people to do is be thinking about, well, what can I do now what can I take away that paper towel away from the hob so that can I use an electronic candle for decorative purpose instead of an actual candle, and set up our house so that we've practiced our evacuation plans, talked about it with our children and anyone else who might need some help understanding that. Perhaps there's if with a disability overlay, there might be some cognition challenges about what it means when that smoke detector goes off. It's not always evident to people that means I need to leave the house now. And obviously getting to your letterbox, out of your house, right out of the way of smoke and fire, then calling the fire brigade who will come and do their best to save your possessions. They'll be happiest to know you're out the front and safe too, because as a firefighter, I've certainly gone to fires in the truck and have been thinking, oh God, I hope nobody's in that house that I can clearly see from 3 blocks away is well alight.
Yeah. Now, for people living alone, what extra fire safety steps do you think they should be taking?
Well, coming back to that concept of neighbourhoods, we'd love our people to check on their neighbours, of course. It's a great thing to do to just check on your neighbour on a hot day, and let alone, if they need a hand clearing around their house. If you live alone, look, there's lots of benefits to living alone in terms of, you get to live your way and have your house operate in your own space, and that's lovely. But we'd love people to have a friend, a buddy, a companion, someone to check in on them regularly because, as we all get older, it gets harder to keep up with everything and to make sure the house, effectively for us, what we would love is if our house was easy for us to come into if we needed in an emergency to get in to help you. So having clear pathways for an exit, having working smoke detectors, all those sort of things can help give us peace of mind that you're as safe as possible. With the example I mentioned about someone who was hard of hearing, we've got access now to some wonderful smoke detectors that actually work for people who have hearing loss. And so they vibrate under the pillow and flash a strobe light, which will help alert you if you're slumber when there's a smoke detected. So some of this technology is available on subsidies that if someone in your family needs that, we'd love you to have access to that technology so that they can get the earliest possible warning.
How important is it having that escape plan? Obviously, these newer smoke detectors have come in to play. I remember them being, very old school. Then it was, change the batteries around daylight savings time now. What advice do you give those who are carers or support workers or family members helping someone stay safe at home?
We've designed some apps that are designed to use with people who are at higher risk. We call the app Prevent, Detect and Escape. And the idea is that the person themselves can start to consider where their risk might be in their personal living situation, where they live, the area, the risks of bushfire, and how they live inside their house. This app is designed to be used by the person, maybe if they need some assistance, as you said, a family member or a care worker, someone who visits their house regularly to provide services, can provide support to work through that app. So they end up with what we call a person-centered plan. So that my plan, Brian, would look very different to yours because I live somewhere different and I live in a rural area. You may live in an apartment building. But then you end up with a customized plan, and we've got all these resources available for free on our website, and you'll have that link in your podcast comments. But the idea is that people can be in the front seat of working out how prepared they are and what they would do in an emergency. If there was a bushfire, where would they go? So we can actually get people starting to think about having a bag prepared and packed. That's what we call their go bag. And that way the time it takes to put your essential items in, your medications, your phone charger, a radio to listen to ABC radio, for example, for emergency updates, having on your phone the app Vic Emergency would all set you up for the best success in that catastrophic conditions. But I think one of the key messages we'd like to promote is in a bushfire scenario, it's essential to leave early. So we have a new fire rating system and there's a new category called catastrophic. We had a catastrophic day last week.
Yeah.
And at that point, we'd like people to consider if they know tomorrow is going to be a catastrophic day, today's a great day to go and visit your friends in another area that's not under attack from a bushfire, because leaving early is key. Leaving late can be disastrous, and trying to stay and fight a massive bushfire with a garden hose is a fruitless exercise. We would love people to go and stay with friends, let our firefighters do what they can do without worrying that you're stuck at home, because the reality is we're not going to be able to get to everyone in a bushfire because they're so all engaging and we've only got limited resources. It would just be wonderful to know that people, and look, even my mum, where she lives, I ask her on a catastrophic day, come and stay with me, mum. Just come down and have a visit in the city. I'll know you're safe. You don't have to worry about what that smoke you can smell is. And then when it's all over, we'll go home and we'll deal with what we've got left.
Yeah, because you did mention the go bag, and the question does come up quite a bit in general conversation with people asking, what do they prepare? Like even if they're under a watch and act alert versus it's time to go and evacuate, are there other things they should be thinking about that they need to prepare as well?
Yeah, we've actually got a suggested list on our website that I'll send you the direct link for. That is just a nice list of the things that you might not have considered. Like, for example, if you require on prescriptions, what would happen if in your town where you normally go to get your medications was no longer there? What would you do to make sure there's no gap in your prescription? What would you do to make sure that your assistive technology, if you use a power wheelchair, how would you make sure that stays with you and gets you somewhere safe? And all the other things we need to live comfortably and safely, that bag, and my mum has one, and every sort of end of autumn, we sit down together and look at it and go, well, let's make sure everything's got fresh batteries, got a flashlight in there, some water. Her dog is her baby, so make sure there's some dog food in there for your dog if we have to leave in a hurry, and talk about what actually practicing an evacuation. Let's get in the car, mum, and practice driving down and where you would go to an area that's very unlikely to have a fire come through it, a big cleared football oval, for example. But what that actually does is that doesn't alarm mum. It gives her a new sense of reassurance that there is a plan so that she's not having to make those sort of decisions in a panicked state. And that in itself, I've noticed with mum, has helped her feel a lot more comfortable in living in a bushy area where she lives. So go bags are personal, but I'll send you through a list of the sort of things that we think are probably a good consideration.
I love what we were talking about the community aspect and the camaraderie from the people in the community. What role do you think neighbours and local communities play in keeping vulnerable people safe from fire, do you think?
I think it's essential that people have a connection to community. I mean, some people are more extroverted and like gregarious group gatherings, and other people may have one or two close friends, but that's essential for keeping an eye on each other to make sure that, if someone was hard of hearing, that they might not hear on a radio that there's a fire coming, for example. So a neighbour would go and say, hey, Mary, probably want to think about leaving tomorrow. It's going to be a catastrophic day. So I think, as I said, at a core of our culture is the looking after your mates. But as an extension of that is keeping an eye open for everyone. So I've seen it time and time again where communities rally around people, and even after a fire might have devastated someone, communities donate items and goods and money so that those people can get back on their feet as soon as possible. And again, it sort of defines us in a way. So I think community is key.
You mentioned the Prevent, Detect, Escape app, which is available via the website, cfa.vic.gov.au. Does the CFA offer home fire safety checks or educational resources for seniors and people with disability as well?
There's lots of resources for them and their family and care team to access and use. We offer a service called People at Higher Risk Emergency Preparation Advisory Service, which is a pilot program that I'm very fortunate to be part of, where in circumstances where people are struggling to use that information and might need a little extra layer of assistance, my team and I can come and actually meet with people and have a look. Now, we don't do that in the first instance because we've got the resources, but there have been cases, and Marcus, you mentioned a client of yours that needs to be electronically hoisted. Well, if the power went out, that would be a real challenge for that person. So we would go and meet with them, and we're available to do that. It's still in pilot phase and will be evaluated, but we imagine that down the track we will be more resourced. Our chief is fantastically engaged in this process and trying to protect this element of our community. So eventually there'll be facilitators who are trained in this EPAS model all around the state to help people. So stay tuned on that one.
I love the idea of the app because I know the Vic Emergency app is also triggered and it goes off, within your radius and the detection. And it did actually happen to me a few weeks back, holidaying over in Lorne, and suddenly the app went off in the middle of the night because the fire was burning just behind us. But it's great to have access to these types of technologies that can alert us to these things, the smoke detectors, the smoke alarms. In terms of the key message, or one key message, if you could give just one life-saving message to older Australians and people with disability listening today, what would it be?
Have the app downloaded and set for your area, like you did in Lorne. Have it with the radio set for wherever you're staying so that you can be notified as early as possible and then leave early. We want people to leave far before a disaster occurs so that we know they're safe and sound. We can always replace buildings, but we can't replace people and all the other things. We love our animals and our livestock. So we would love people to download the app and leave early.
Definitely don't leave the animals behind because they're obviously part of the fabric, aren't they? They're part of the family, and it is so unfortunate to see these incidences of farms going up in livestock, and it hurts my heart watching the livestock and koalas and so forth. So
I will share with you that Mum told me the other day, semi-facetiously, that if there was a fire, she'd save the dog and I'd have to fend for myself. So I know my priority in the household.
You've gone down a rank, have you, Tim?
Fat dogs rule our house.
So the app is available via the CFA website, cfa.vic.gov.au. Plan, prepare your local area info and advice, e-learning as well, that you can do that. ABC News and radio, the Vic Emergency app, are two really critical channels as well in terms of key communication areas. What's one simple action you think listeners can take away today, that could genuinely save their life tomorrow?
Check that you've got working smoke detectors at home, in your bedrooms and in all the other major areas of the house. Time to upgrade if you haven't changed them over for a while. They only last 10 years, but the new ones, 10-year battery, no climbing up on ladders every 6 months. Working smoke detectors save lives.
We're speaking with Tim from the Country Fire Authority, community educator. Tim, we've also like to know that you're also a member of the community, member of society. So you've been a volunteer for a number of years, but as a key person working in this space now, I want to know a little bit about Tim the person, because you do have quite significant amount of experience. You mentioned 20 plus years, working in the motor vehicle crash, responding to those incidents. And you've also got a passion for photography and wildlife. Do you snap a few pics while you're out and about doing your job?
I'm a tragic. I have always have a camera with me. I've been taking photos since I was a young man. And yes, I'm not a very good photographer, but I'm that guy that's always like, hey guys, look this way at a party. I'm the one that everyone asks did you bring your camera? So I spend way too much money on camera bits and bobs. But yeah, I'm a tragic. So we can talk photography another day.
Okay, you'll get in for another episode. So Tim the person, you did mention that you had experienced a series of strokes back in 2023 and are living with a disability now, but also the winner of a bronze medal at the Australian Sailability Championships. I want to know more about this.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because I don't get to brag about it too much.
Well, come on, here's your 5 minutes.
Sure. I was a very out of shape kid. I didn't do a lot of sport as a kid, so resultantly never really picked any medals or trophies or ribbons up as a young man. But in the last sort of 6 months, I've taken to a beautiful program called Sailability, which allows people of all types of accessibility to get in a sailboat and sail independently or with a helper in these beautiful boats called a Hansa 303, which is an Australian design. So as a novice sailor, I was invited to attend a training camp in Perth in November, which also was going to culminate in the Australian Championships. Now, just between you and I drilled holes in everybody else's boats so that I could come home with a bronze medal.
How'd I guess you were going to say that?
I don't know if that's a sportsman-like conduct, but I was delighted to come home with a bling. My wife said I wasn't allowed to talk about it very often because she thought it was braggadocious, but sailing is a really beautiful way to connect in nature. And so I've currently taken on a role promoting sailing as to people who might have a lived experience of disability. So if you want to come sailing with me, Marcus, Brian, I invite you to come and join me in Docklands. We can have a sail. You have to let me win. That's the only caveat.
Keep the drill at home. Marcus is not too sure about it, that's for sure.
These boats are magnificent. I sailed with a whole bunch of other people, both Australians and internationals in Perth. And you know what? It didn't matter that I had a disability. No one talked about it because the boats and the program is designed so everyone can have a go and be part of it. No one cared that I had a disability. And you've seen me, I walk with a very obvious deficit from my stroke. But people just tease me about my bad sailing. It wasn't important that I had a disability because it didn't matter. It was a beautiful utopian experience. So sailing's for everyone, folks. Give it a go.
There you go. And there's not many people out there that will talk about that or speak about sailing in that way. But you've got a bronze medal to show for it.
I should have brought it in.
You should have. I think Marcus is probably saying pics or it never happened. I want to know what a typical day looks like for you, because you're out on the road, you're doing your thing for educating the community in these really key, important messages. What is a normal day like for you, Tim?
So we'll get a referral for the program, and all we know is it's a person who lives in a vulnerable way, might have a disability, might be aged or frail. And I get to go out and introduce myself to these people. They invite me into their homes. I've eaten way too many Tim Tams and had cups of tea in the last couple of years, and my physique is reflecting that. But I get to meet people, talk about what worries them and what keeps them up at night in terms of fire safety. But then over subsequent visits, we get to design a program around what they want and they need, which is lovely because it's really their ownership to take that on. We might put up some smoke detectors for them. We might make sure the house is a bit more ready for, the best fire safety as possible. And then I get to say goodbye to them, often with a hug, because we've formed a bit of a friendship. I talk about my disability so that I come in sharing that, and then they'll share their journey. And beautifully, I drive away, I have this warm, fuzzy sense that we might have made a difference for that one person. And, some of these people are dealing with some pretty challenging life circumstances, but the last thing we want is them or their family members terrified that they're in jeopardy. So it's lovely because we'll never know how many people we help in terms of what we mitigate and avoid. But look, I get paid to go and have Tim Tams and cups of tea with lots of lovely people. It's wonderful. And they're from all walks of life. And yet, everybody worries about this stuff. So it's a delightful day. I have a good day every day at work.
because there are tough days, and there'd be probably quite a few of those, especially during the hot summer fire season. What keeps you motivated when those days are around?
Well, I think of my mum. I think, what would I hope my mum would be prepared for where she lives? And I think, well, those people I go and spend is someone else's mum, someone else's dad or daughter or son. And so I think of it almost as like that same community thinking is, how can we help people that need a bit of assistance to be as safe as possible? So it feels wonderful. Even the tough days, we feel like we're making a difference. And I speak on behalf of all the CFA volunteers out there. You know, we all signed up for this, and we know it's tough work and challenging, but we do it because we actually feel really good about making a difference for people.
Give me a proud career moment for you. I know it's going back in the archives.
During the floods on the Murray River a couple of years ago, I was very lucky to be selected to work out of a helicopter to do a road rescue team. So in a situation where perhaps an area is flooded by and rings circled by water and you couldn't get a rescue fire truck in, they equipped a helicopter with all the road rescue equipment. I got to put on a flight suit and aviator glasses. We didn't have to actually do any rescues on my deployment, but I got to say I went to work in a helicopter one day, and that was probably the coolest thing I've ever done.
You are a bragger, Tim, aren't you?
I am, and I can evidence this with photos. I provided aviator glasses to all the other SES and Ambulance Victoria crew, but it was such a lovely thing to be part of because, you know, the CFA, as I said, it's been in my blood for a long time, and that was an opportunity that was one out of the box.
Whether you're wearing a CFA uniform, police uniform, firefighters uniform, it represents so much about what we represent as a country and how we can volunteer our time. What advice would you give to someone considering a career in this space or coming along to volunteer for the CFA?
I think volunteering is, again, something that develops skills and builds capacities in individuals. But as a community, there's so many wonderful first responder organisations that would love to have people come along and bring whatever they can add into the mix. So there's the SES, they do amazing work in crisis. There's obviously some opportunities to do some work around supporting people with first aid. And obviously the CFA. There's so many ways the Red Cross is another great organisation that I've collaborated with in this project. So there's so many ways people can get out there and help their mates. Volunteering is at the key of that, I think. And so the more people are out there, the more we will work together as one.
Now, you did mention just quickly that there was a quick and easy online module called Prevent, Detect, Escape, which will empower people to be as safe as possible. Give us a little bit of an insight into how that works.
Look, it's quick and easy. It takes about 30 minutes. It's also available for people who might have low literacy, so they can work through the suggested scenarios, watch some real life videos of people who've been through this sort of crisis, so they can work out, well, how much of that applies to me? It's not meant to alarm them. It's just meant to forearm them with the skills and the strategies so that they know what to do and when to do it.
Tim, you've been such a wealth of knowledge. I really appreciate your time coming in to have a chat with us here on Outreach. A final message for all of our listeners, people who are either listening, sitting, either in a SIL home or an SDA home, or people on the NDIS or on a supported home care package. Give us a couple of key messages that you can leave them with today.
So people who are on a home care package can access resources for their workers to help them to think about some of these strategies. All those are available on our website. In terms of people who are, living in a vulnerable way, get out there, live your best life, but obviously as fire safe as possible would certainly help me and my team feel really wonderful about, people's vulnerability, because we want everyone out there to have amazing experiences and not be caught up in some of the tragedies that have been happening.
Tim, thank you so much for coming in. Folks, we've we'll share the links out. We'll just get Marcus to add that onto the rest of our social media posts, but definitely head over to cfa.vic.gov.au. Also, the CFA website, plan and prepare your local area info and advice, the e-learning module that we just mentioned. Always stay connected. The Vic Emergency app is a really important key as well, and all of your local news and radio channels. This has been Outreach on Westsider Radio. Tim, thank you so much for your time today.
Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Marcus.
Can we get you back in again and maybe have another chinwag? You're a wealth of knowledge.
Sounds great. Love to.
Right, we'll do a deal. This has been Outreach on Westsider Radio, coming to you from Kindred Studios in Yarraville, thanks to Gratitude Home Care and I Help Disability Services. Care when you need it, support you can count on.